It has been nearly 13 years since we have had an entry in the Top Spin series. Anchor 13 has brought it back with Top Spin 2K25, a simulation-focused tennis game with almost no content. Retailing at $70, I am dumbfounded at how little there is to do in this game outside of mostly just basic exhibition matches. In typical 2K fashion, most of the game's progression is tied to paid cosmetic microtransactions. If you can't tell, I am massively disappointed. And while it's not all bad, most of it is, so let's go over it in the XboxEra review of Top Spin 2K25. Tennis was an ever-present part of my childhood. We always had rackets and would occasionally walk down a few miles to the local courts where we would absolutely suck but have a lot of fun. Top Spin 2K25 looks to recreate none of the fun of tennis, focusing instead on a weirdly robotic take on the sport. The game has a decent roster of men and women, stars of today and times past. Some of the models look great, like Serena Williams. Others, like Pete Sampras, look oddly nothing like their real-life counterparts. All of them, though, look like weird robot people who have never properly emoted in their life and just stare blankly ahead in a weirdly unsettling way. There's 25 players in total, with some big names missing from previous entries, though 2K has promised there will be more added post-launch. Progression mainly comes in two forms, first being your My Career player, who has a leveling system tied to experience points. It's typically egregious 2K in that your coin consumables are needed if you want to do something, say, as basic as resetting your attribute points and more. The other is a number of season passes planned for post-release. These are entirely cosmetic and pushed hard, because this game really doesn't have much else to do. When you look at the modes, you realistically have your Top Spin Academy, which is a set of tutorials voiced over by John McEnroe. Exhibition, where you can play singles or doubles with up to 4 people. My Career, which is a series of really mediocre, there's this podcast that plays whenever you're in the menu system, and it is infuriating. And then you just play a bunch of matches, and it's whatever, but that podcast is so bad. Then you've got online exhibition, online tournaments, and online ranked, and that's pretty much it, and it's really disappointing. Top Spin 2K25 feels like a first-generation Apple product, and we are paid beta testers. If the game was meant to be a platform with more added to it over time, I'd have hope that more would be added to this version. Having the 2K25 at the end, though, means it's more likely than not going to become annualized, and things like an actual proper career, Grand Slam, or tournament modes not tied to online might never be a thing. Any misgivings I have about the game's setup could be overlooked a little if the on-court action was an ace. Sadly, it is very much not. Movement is both stiff and occasionally too loose. Most of the time, your character barely moves. Then randomly, they'll drift halfway across the court at the tiniest flick of the analog stick. Being tennis, things are going to feel repetitive. It's just back and forth, hitting the ball, whatever. But the game's biggest sin was the number of times I hit one of the face buttons, each assigned to its own shot type, and my character simply refused to swing. Top Spin is all about positioning, and I would make sure my character was in a spot to hit the ball back. I press A for a power shot, nothing happened. There's a meter that comes up above your head as you go for a shot, and you want to let it go right as it ticks into the green on the far right. It's a fun system at first, though it does become a bit distracting to have to always look at the meter instead of the court. Far too often, though, I would just press a shot button and wait for the meter to come up, and nothing happened. It was a constant issue at least 4 or 5 times a match, where I knew I was in a position to hit the ball, yet my character never tried to. And even when they do, every action feels robotic and tied to the game's otherwise really good animations. There's no fudging of things behind the scenes. Animations must end, momentum must be maintained, and if the game has determined that your good timing should result in a shot that goes out, it just does. Much like the early NBA 2K games, I found a rhythm in exactly how to easily beat the computer in a singles match in a few minutes. Hit a serve with X to this spot, then return with a power shot to the right, and you win. AI in tennis games only goes so far, and the game does have more online modes than it does offline. Its biggest sin there is the lack of being able to just play against a friend at launch. There's only matchmaking. Again, it feels like we are beta testers for a product that is not ready for prime time. Graphically, the game looks alright. Character models are of a generally high quality, except for Pete Sampras, who really does not look anything like real-life Pete Sampras. But all of that character fidelity doesn't matter whenever you have the game's numerous in-match cutscenes where everyone's face just stares blankly forward, looking fresh out of a lobotomy. It's the most uncanny valley thing when Serena Williams, fresh off of smashing a 100-mile-per-hour ace, just vacantly stares across the court with a bit of a smile on her face, like she just had half of her brain removed with an ice cream scoop. The animations are really good, matching the player's style, though they do dictate heavily how the game feels to play. I would have sacrificed some animation fidelity so that I felt like I had more control. The courts look pretty good, though the crowd is pretty bad. You get a lot of the same models standing next to each other with some truly terrible looking hair in comparison to the pros. The same goes for a TV-style presentation with lots of cuts to the crowd, because you end up seeing the same female face with the same one or two hairstyles all standing next to each other, and it got real old real quick. And yeah, my career has a podcast that rambles on every time you're in a menu, and it sucks. It feels like at most points this game didn't have that big of a budget, or either that or John McEnroe's Top Spin Academy voiceover ate it all up. He will walk you through the basics of the sport, and it's a decent tutorial for beginners. But the biggest issue I have with the game is how deeply tied any sense of progression is to the Season Pass system. They gave us their super duper $120 fancy version for review, and I think this game probably should not cost more than $30. With the lack of modes, players, etc., it feels like a slap in the face that so much of the content on offer are just cosmetics tied to microtransactions and DLC. Wrapping things up, Topspin 2K25 is a massive disappointment, feeling more like beta software with a lack of modes, players, and fun. I cannot recommend this to anyone at its egregious $70 price point.